Hate runs rampant throughout the United States. Whether it be about one's gender, sexuality, race, or religion, there's always some aspect about diverse people that another will find a reason to hate.
My name's Jared Pimentel.
My name is Ivan Pyers.
My name is Akoro.
My name is Bridget.
Richard O'Carmel.
I'm from New Bedford.
Around the New Bedford area since 2019-ish, on and off.
In Bedford, Massachusetts.
I'm from New Bedford.
I'm 23.
23 years old.
I'm 23.
24 years old.
25.
Hatred has changed the way people interact in the United States, and after speaking with local members of Gen Z, it is clear they're sensing it.
Hate is ultimately something I think comes from fear and or lack of understanding, because ultimately people fear what they don't understand. It's a part of everyone.
Definitely think hatred comes from insecurity. Sometimes people will hate on other people for just being themselves or being comfortable being themselves.
You don't just get born with hate. You learn it somewhere, and usually it comes from people's parents, unfortunately.
I think I was about 6 or 7 when I was first exposed to hate speech.
I would say around 11 or 12, just from growing up in the time of Call of Duty lobbies.
I was probably like 17, 18 when I had my first job at Little Caesars. It was a white dude, obviously. Bald white dude goes into my job, says some ridiculous shit. And I can't really specify what it was because it's just not off the top of my head. But I know for sure everyone in that place who heard that was like, that guy's racist as fuck. And I'm like, I know, that was crazy, wasn't it?
I think the one instance I remember a little more vividly, there was an Instagram post by a famous college organization, I suppose. And they posted a little bit of misinformation about facilities workers. And I remember basically correcting it, saying hey, this is what actually happened. I remember there was an email sent out about it. I remember randomly getting a bunch of notifications in the middle of the night. And then I remember specifically a business major DMing me, literally saying, hey, this is why we colonized you, and things like that. And that caught me off guard because I was like, oh shit, that was, I did not expect that. Definitely see a lot of hate online. The world you see in real life may not necessarily reflect the ones you see on a phone or on TV, because there's a focus on hate, which leads to people being more scared as a result. It's a cycle.
I definitely not as often as I see it on the internet. Most likely I will be seeing it on the internet, just people being unnecessarily hateful. But throughout my day-to-day life, not so much, because I feel like people don't have the courage to be saying it in day-to-day life.
It's usually on the internet, I feel like, though. Not so much in person anymore. Definitely makes it easier because there's no immediate consequences.
There's one person in mind that really kind of enables hatred in the US.
I definitely think, especially as of late, post-Trump, if that makes sense, is when the rhetoric of using identity-based political talking points, those have definitely been on the rise.
This person is at the forefront of a lot of hate campaigns and a lot of hateful actions, and a lot of stuff is just done in this figure's name. I think that it has a lot to do with hate, because you can just influence an entire group of people just like that, and they will mobilize to do something that's incredibly disgusting and horrific.
Oftentimes, if you just tune into the news and just social media for the most part, the vocal minority, if that makes sense, is oftentimes just focusing on the hatred.
Around the incident with George Floyd, I saw a lot of people on Facebook in the New Bedford groups just saying horrific things about people that were gathered in the streets, saying that they should run them over, get them off the street.
I think there are a lot of political figures nowadays that focus too much on trying to target the demographic of hateful people by trying to incite and create more hate to gain support for themselves rather than doing the intelligent thing of just being a good person.
I feel like this country kind of claims that it has neutrality when it's almost blatantly obvious that there isn't. You know, there's plenty of people that I know personally that have been attacked, misjudged, put under the rug, pushed to the side.
I was about 18 when I learned about the concept of queer people when I went to college.
Probably when I was 14, because one of my best friends in my freshman year of high school was trans.
I think I was probably around like 7 or 8 years old learning about queer people.
I was definitely in kindergarten. It was like a close family friend that I could definitely tell that he liked boys. You always wonder, like people say, oh, how do people know? Because they always assume that they're supposed to be attracted to the opposite gender, and they always wonder, oh, when does that start? And it definitely made me realize growing up that it can start very early.
I think my first experience really like realizing like how broad sexuality is was probably like in high school. I'm not the type to be like, oh, this is your sexuality, because that's corny, and you look like a bum, truthfully.
I learned about gender and sexuality when I was in school, for the most part, middle school. Not necessarily in an academic setting, but sort of growing up together.
I went to Catholic school, so gender and sexuality wasn't really a topic that was discussed very frequently.
I understand gender as like a spectrum, and it's not just like one set thing. It's something that kind of like always changes. Is like you could identify as like a she, her, like 1 minute, or like something completely different with like neo-pronouns that no one's ever heard of before.
Think of gender as a part of identity and self-expression.
I don't understand gender as a concept at all, if I'm being quite honest. My sibling recently came out as trans, so I've been trying to get a better grasp on it as of recent, but I will say I am nowhere near where I probably should be.
Like, I knew about racism, but like I would say when I properly learned about racism was probably around like when I was like 19.
Ironically enough, I think I was 17, and I was doing a project about police brutality in my senior year of high school, and that's when, seeing all the statistics put together, and that's when it started to really click.
I would say I was about 18 as well, going into UMass Dartmouth. I had my eyes closed for very long, and then going into college was when they began to open.
I would say like 7. Considering that my father and like his side of the family are from Portugal, and my mom is a bit like dark, and seeing that his side of the family wasn't really accepting of my mom and would call her names and didn't want to consider her part of the family.
I think there was like a very mild explanation of racism, but it's not something that I feel like a lot of like academic spaces really want to talk about.
That's another trope of being in Catholic school, with it being racism being an almost forbidden topic as well.
I am not religious. However, I did have a strong background with religion in the Catholic Church for a good portion of my early life.
I grew up in a Hindu and Buddhist household, and I had my own, like reckonings with religion over the course of my life, but I would say I'm not, because I'm definitely more, I guess, atheist or agnostic. At most, you can call me spiritual, but that's probably the Buddhist in me talking.
I'm not religious. I was born and raised Roman Catholic, and fell out of practice around 5 years ago. I think it's a lot more common with the older generation as opposed to younger people. I will say a lot more of the older people in my life are religious.
I don't really think about it that much, and that's kind of more so only because I wasn't really forced in it. I was given more so the option to, believe what you believe in. If not, you don't want to be running out here with no type of belief at least, but just have a a general idea of stuff that you believe in, see if that works for you, all that stuff.
I would say religion is a pretty prominent thing in New Bedford, especially with the Portuguese people, because as we all know, New Bedford is pretty central to a lot of Portuguese culture.
I would say religion's prominent, especially with the Feast of the Blessed Sacrament in New Bedford every year.
While local members of Gen Z's experiences growing up have tainted their current view of the world, they also make it clear they still have hope for a brighter future.
Definitely have a lot of hope for the future, which might seem a little ironic given that a lot of the work I do involves dealing with quote unquote like really bad people. But I think at the same time, it is in encountering those types of things that has given me the most hope.
Definitely work to be done, don't get me wrong, but I'd be lying if I said, people in Gen Z don't take strides to, try to make this country a better, more comfortable place. I definitely see the progress that people in America are trying to make with, making moves towards making this country a little bit better.
I can only hope, because at some point, all of the hatred and closed-mindedness will have to die out at some point. But it's quite easy to lose hope in the ability that we could all live in peace and harmony together.
I would like to hope that it would change. However, because a lot of the baby boomers are still in power, I have a feeling that nothing will change until they are finally removed from that seat of power. But you can definitely see it in a few of the younger politicians that are coming into office nowadays, like AOC.
I think it's really just going to be the younger people that's going to make all of that stuff. It's not going to happen overnight and will probably take a while, but a lot of the hate comes from people's parents and their parents' parents. So once those generations stop bringing it down, I feel like it would, I wouldn't say go away, but it would be less frequent.
Eat the rich. I kid you not, the rich, they're the problem. They're the problem. They're the ones that are in power. They're the ones with all the money. If a small percentage of that, could go to so many public projects.
I think we can combat hate by standing up. I think it's very easy just to hear hatred or see it somewhere and just keep scrolling or let the words and phrases fly rather than calling them out and having those difficult conversations, because no one likes being uncomfortable. But to have widespread change, it's not going to be a switch that flips. It's a series of conscious decisions that everyone has to make.
I think combating hate is an interesting topic in itself, because to combat hate, you have to listen and understand. But then overcoming that is, I suppose, what really counts, like empathy and kindness.